After 8 miserable years, our military heroes can no longer afford this Prime Minister. This NDP-Liberal government keeps driving troop morale down and their costs up. A recently leaked report stated, increasingly members will release from the Canadian Forces rather than relocate to an area they cannot afford or taking a loss on an existing home. The Canadian Armed Forces are in a crisis and are short 16,000 people, but these Liberals are pushing people away and making things worse. Why is the Prime Minister destroying our military?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, before I start, I just want to recognize that today we remember Adresa Patrice Vincent, who lost his life in 2014.
Of the honourable member, I would like to say that, when you think about the housing situation, just last year in our fiscal update, we put $55 million towards the support in residential housing for our CAF member. Also, I would like to acknowledge the support that we're putting on our member when they relocate of the reimbursement, legal and real estate fee. Mr. Speaker, we will always be there for our military.
Député de Selkirk-Interlake Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is actually repeating Liberal history known as the Decade of Darkness. Soldiers and their families back then were forced to use food banks. There were slashes to training programs. They operated on old equipment and were sent to Afghanistan without proper boots or uniforms. And now this month the headlines read, soldiers asking for donations to help with housing and food costs. Canadian Forces personnel leaving their ranks over lack of affordable housing. Canada looking to cut $1 billion from the national defence budget. Our troops are out there fighting for our freedoms. Why is this Prime Minister attacking their economic freedom?
Before I continue, I'd like to encourage members, especially those who are at the far end of the House, to please not have conversations as it can cause disruption in the House. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And again, I want to say thanks to the member for his questions because it actually allows me just to validate some of the measures and the supports that we have put in place for our military. As I mentioned earlier, the reimbursing, the legal and the real estate fees, the covering of some expense for dual residency for up to 6 months if a CAM member cannot sell their residence. We will continue also supporting our Canadian Armed Force posted across the country and their family. For example, the post-living differential allowance is intended to help reduce financial burdens for CAF personnel and their family. Mr. Speaker, we will not take any lessons from this side of the House.
Selkirk-Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are discriminating against people of faith who are wanting to contribute to our veterans. And it's bad Liberal policy that is actually driving down morale in the Canadian Armed Forces. It was reported that troops are leaving the forces in droves because of the lack of good, affordable housing. And sadly, military families are being forced to ask for donations to help offset the high cost of food and housing. After 8 long years, the troops can no longer afford these Liberals or will make that sacrifice. When will the Prime Minister finally start supporting our troops?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, I won't take any lessons today from this side of the House. Because you know what, Mr. President? When they were in power, they actually cut spending, fall below 1%. Let me be very clear. Military members and their families are our top priorities. And we're taking steps to ensure that they are supported. In our budget 2022, we've invested $55 million in residential housing for CAF. We will be there for our troops. We will always support them, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, those who join the Canadian Forces do so because they believe in service to their country. Now members are leaving their jobs because they can't keep up with rising house costs. Those who keep us safe can't afford a home. And the Liberals and Conservative solution? Leave housing to condo developers who keep costs so high. The people who serve us deserve better. What is this government going to do to ensure that members of the Canadian Armed Forces do not become homeless?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, I want to say thanks to the member for raising, and I know how advocate she has brought forward a lot of issues in this House. But let me be very clear. Military members and their families are our top priorities, and we're taking steps to ensure that they are supported. This is why we're working with our stakeholders to align resources and acquire additional housing, Mr. Speaker. In our budget 2022-2023 alone, we've invested $55 million in residential housing for our CAF member. Merci, Monsieur le Président.